Hey, you guys, this is Phil Morris. I'm sure you know me from my many appearances on Star Trek, from the original Star Trek to Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. And you are listening to Trek Untold.
Hello and welcome to Trek Untold, the podcast that goes beyond the stars. I'm your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. A few months ago on this show, we spoke with Iona Morris, who is one of the few people who can say she appeared in the original series as well as a modern Trek show with her appearance on Star Trek Voyager. But when we're talking about today's guest, we're discussing an actor who appeared not only in the original series, not only in an original series movie, but also 2 modern Treks with 3 different appearances in those shows for a total of 5 generation-spanning Star Trek appearances. That's because our guest today is Iona's brother, Phil Morris. If you're scratching your head at the name and think it sounds familiar, Iona and Phil are both the children of Greg Morris, one of the stars of the original Mission Impossible show. That's how they became connected to Star Trek as children, and put them around the business in a pretty big way. Phil is one of those guests who just has so many credits to his name. It's really hard to pick a handful of things to discuss. His career spans several decades, with his resume picking up steam in 1980. And here in 2020, he's got just under 200 appearances on TV shows and films. You can find Mr. Morris pop up in Knight Rider, The Young and the Restless, Cheers, the Mission Impossible reboot from 1988, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Melrose Place, Martin, Diagnosis Murder, Terminator, The Sarah Connor Chronicles, Blackish, and of course, who could forget him as Jackie Chiles in Seinfeld. But it's not just his face, as his voice has given life to many animated characters in shows and films like Disney's Atlantis, Eddie Murphy's stop-motion series The PJs, Men in Black the animated series, Justice League, Danny Phantom, Kim Possible, Black Dynamite, Batman the Brave and the Bold, a bunch of Scooby-Doo cartoons, and most recently in Craig of the Creek on Cartoon Network. Now, as for Star Trek, Phil first appeared in the original series episode Miri with his sister all the way back in 1966. And nearly 20 years later, he returned to the franchise with an appearance in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. In that film, he acted face-to-face with William Shatner in a very memorable scene. He returned to Trek on Deep Space Nine, first as the Klingon warrior Topak in the fan-favorite episode Looking for Parmok in All the Wrong Places, and again as a Jem'Hadar, the Third Remata Klan in Rocks and Shoals. Phil made one last appearance as Lieutenant John Kelly in Star Trek Voyager's standout episode, One Small Step. And all of these are really worth giving a rewatch, especially after you hear his memories from filming them. Phil has got a lot of great stories, and we covered a lot of ground in this episode. So get yourself a fresh bowl of gach and listen up. This is going to be a good one. Before we jump into our interview, I want to remind everyone to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Trek Untold. And that's all one word, no spaces. You can also support this show by visiting patreon.com/Trek Untold. If you want to check out some of our merch and put Trek Untold on a shirt, hoodie, mug, sticker, or something else, head on over to teespring.com/stores/Trek Untold to proudly display how much you like this podcast. And if you do happen to get some Trek Untold merch, go ahead and tag us on social media and let us know you got it. We'd love to see it. But most of all, please make sure to subscribe to this podcast and to leave a rating and a review. There's a lot of Star Trek podcasts out there, as I'm sure you already know, and leaving ratings and reviews helps people find us when they're searching for these types of shows. If you're already following us or offering your support in whatever way you can, be it a follow, review, monetarily, or even just listening today, thank you for the help. There's a family of Star Trek podcasts out there, and we appreciate you joining us here each and every week on the show. I'd also like to make a quick shout out to our friends at Triple Fiction Productions, who make some great 3D printed Star Trek inspired products for toys and people. But you'll hear more about them a little bit later on in the show. Now, without further ado, let's beam up this week's guest. Computer, access interview file.
Affirmative. Initiating program.
And welcome back to Trek Untold, and now joining us on the other side of the line is an actor who has appeared in not one, not two, not three, but 4 different iterations of Star Trek, And on top of that, he's been in about 200 other things that you're going to recognize him from. We're going to talk about a few of those today. And we're joined today by Mr. Phil Morris. Phil, how's it going today?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Now, we spoke with your sister Iona way back in episode 5, and I'm hoping that she had some good things to say about me if she mentioned us to you. If not, anything she said bad was all lies.
She enjoyed the interview very much. We speak all the time. I see her and talk to her all the time, and our shared experiences with Star Trek is one of the things that we talk about quite a bit, actually.
Oh, wonderful. All right, so let's just jump right on in. And normally what we do is we'd ask our guests what their earliest memory of Star Trek is, but in your case, it's a little bit different because basically your first acting gig when you were about 6 or 7 was Star Trek. So how about before we get into that, you tell us a little bit about your family and where you grew up?
Well, my family is, I guess one would consider a bit of a Hollywood family. My father is Greg Morris from the original Mission Impossible series from 66 to 73, and my mother is Leona Morris, who was just a great mom and a wonderful creative force in our lives. And we grew up in Los Angeles, California, actually in Beverly Hills. We all went to Beverly Hills High School, and the real one, not the one they portrayed on the show. And we had a really good, solid upbringing. My parents were both from kind of solid working class backgrounds. My father's from Cleveland, Ohio. My mother's from West Virginia. And so they really instilled a great grounding and a great family atmosphere, even though my father was well known and quite a legend at the time. We understood both parts of that, the fact that he was a groundbreaker and the fact that we were no different than any other person on the planet. And those are very, very good lessons to learn as a young person growing up in this crazy town and then deciding to become an actor. It all helped me, I think, be grounded. So I'm thankful for all that.
Mission Impossible was also produced by Desi Lewis, done in the same studio basically as Star Trek was filmed. So do you remember ever visiting the set with your dad?
Quite a bit. I remember visiting not only the Mission Impossible set, but the Star Trek set. It was right across the breezeway from where the main stage was for Mission Impossible, which when Desi Lewis sold to Paramount Pictures, then became Paramount Studios. So we being my sisters and myself or any friends that were visiting with me, would always go on the Star Trek set, and we'd sit in the Captain Kirk's chair, and we'd pick up the paper mache rocks, and we'd open the doors with the sounds, and, we'd shoot fake phasers at each other on the land, the kind of spacescapes that they had. It was an amazing upbringing, an amazing childhood. It was like Disneyland. The Brady Bunch was filming there, Odd Couple was filming there. It was a real child's paradise.
So that first episode that you appeared in, which was essentially your first, if not one of your first gigs, was in the season 1 episode of Miri, which also has your sister Iona. And your sister's talked in depth about this, but I'd like to hear now your version of things. So how did you guys get on the show, and what do you remember about it?
Well, it was a bit of a stunt cast, meaning they wanted kids on the show as extras, but they didn't want like actory kids who, kind of posed and preened. They just wanted kids. And so who better than actors' kids who understood how to behave on a set? We're not actors, we're just kids playing around and stuff. So I was on the show, my sister Iona was on the show. I believe the Landau's kids were Juliet and was on the show. William Shatner's children were on the show. One of the director's kids was on the show, Tom Grise, Cary Grise, and John Grise, who became an actor later and was in, oh my goodness, what was the name of that film that he was in? Such a good film. Anyway, like I said, it was stunt casted. So we were all just these kids that Napoleon Dynamite. I'm so sorry, John Grise was in Napoleon Dynamite. And it was great. I loved it. If you watch this episode, and you see when one of the grups, which is what the grown-ups were called when they got a certain age and they developed a disease, which is why we were in Arrested Development. All these kids were hundreds of years old. There's a scene where one of the grups kind of escapes into our classroom, into the classroom set, and they have all these lesions on them and blood and stuff. And they didn't tell us, they being the producers, did not tell us that was going to happen. So when they said action and you see this screaming Mimi run through us as kids, we were all freaked out. And it's real freak out time. So when you watch that scene, if you watch that scene again, you'll see that we were all terrified. And so I remember that. I remember Mr. Shatner being just so wonderful to all the kids and so supportive, and it was great. I mean, I remember my first day on the set, when you used to get report cards in school, it was always Morris, comma, and then your name, right? It was your last name first, and then a comma, and then your first name. So when they asked me my name, they're doing a little roll call, and they're like, okay, and you, who are you? I went, Morris, comma, Philip. Oh, my God, the things we do as kids.
So did you get to pick your own wardrobe for the episode, or was that provided to you? Because all the kids had those crazy little outfits they wore.
Yeah, I literally am billed as boy in combat helmet.
Yeah.
No, they gave us that wardrobe. We showed up in whatever we were wearing, and then they gave us that stuff and smudged our face and mussed our hair, if you like, in Iona's case. And no, that was their wardrobe.
And so when you guys weren't filming, what was the set like? Were you all just running around playing, or were they trying to kind of corral everybody?
All playing, all the time. I remember just a lot of fun. John and Carrie Grise became some of our best friends, and we went on to visit them at their house in Malibu. You have to remember, because these were all kids that we knew. I mean, we knew the Landows, we knew the Shatner's kids, we knew them. It was like a little posse, a little crew. So we fit in really well, and I think that if you watch the episode again, you'll just see kids that are playing. Of course, we have to stop to do a look at Shatner or, Bones, or, when the Star Trek crew comes down to visit the planet. Yeah, we have things we have to do as scripted. But if you really watch it, other than some of the other actors, the younger actors who were professional actors, you just see a bunch of kids running around having a good time.
Now, you guys got to do, of course, that scene in the classroom with William Shatner, but also in this episode is Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, Majel Barrett, and I'm sure Gene Roddenberry is somewhere around there.
Well, in fact, in that scene when he's holding up the kid, that's his kid.
Yeah.
That's his daughter who he's holding up.
Did you get to have any interactions, or do you remember having any interactions with any other co-stars or Gene or anybody else?
No, not at all. I mean, what was I, 7 years old at the time? So no, I really don't remember that. I remember being completely taken with the woman who played the ensign, and she had blonde hair and it was all woven on top of her head. I forget what her name was, but I was just struck by her beauty as a 7-year-old kid, one of my very first crushes. And of course Nichelle Nichols, who was a friend of the family, and we knew her, very well. So, again, I don't remember interactions, say, like with Kim Darby, other than casual stuff, or Michael J. Pollard. I had much more interaction with Michael later at conventions than then. They were established actors, and it was if you've ever been on movie sets or TV sets, there's a separation in a way, and we were not number 2, 3 on the call sheet, so we were treated like kids, yes, and extras in a way. So we kind of cohabited with each other.
Do you remember watching that episode when it first aired?
Yeah, of course.
What did you guys think? How excited were you to see yourselves on TV?
Very. I mean, you look and sound very different to yourself when you see yourself on TV or you listen to your voicemail back. And I think that's what I thought. I'm like, wow, I look really goofy. I got to get those teeth fixed. But yeah, I mean, I was not a big Trek fan, so seeing that was fun for me, to see us on camera and to see my friends. But honestly, it wasn't as thrilling as I think it might have been for some kids, because we're like I said, we're kind of Hollywood kids.
So in between the time from Star Trek, the original series, and Star Trek 3, did you go to school to pursue acting?
Yeah, I studied acting for a long time with a man named John Lehne, Lehne. He was Lee Strasberg's monitor in New York, and was the private coach of Jill Clayburgh and John Voight and several other wonderful actors, and set up shop in North Hollywood. And I studied with him for over 10 years, and up until the point that he passed away, I studied improv acting with Harvey Lembeck, who was probably most notable for playing Von Zipper in the Beach Blanket movies with Frankie and Annette. I studied, film acting with Tony Barr at Tony Barr's Film Actors Workshop. I mean, yeah, I did comprehensive studying with some of the best acting coaches I could possibly find. My very first one was Guy Stockwell, who was the brother of Dean Stockwell, who was quite an iconic actor as well. So yeah, I kind of did my due diligence, man. I needed to know. I couldn't just roll into this because I was Greg Morris's son and had a pretty smile. I had to figure it out, and those mentors helped me quite a bit.
So what would be a lesson that you remember learning back then that's stuck with you today?
Don't make the easy choice. Don't make the simple choice. Make the one that is interesting to you. Make the one that moves you. in a way that you can't deny. And that was a very big note, because a lot of times, I'll just speak for myself. You roll into certain things, and you just want to get the job. You want it, so you do the thing you think will work, right? You do the thing you think will impress them, as opposed to the honest thing, the thing that really is a part of you, the thing that really does move you, and that takes work. It takes exploration. It takes an understanding and acceptance of yourself, and that was a very simple direction, or a very simple instruction, but a very valuable one for me. So I try and make the interesting choices. That's why Jackie's so interesting, I think. That's why my work now as a more mature actor is better and better and better. I'm challenging myself to explore deeper, to dive deeper, so that we're all interested in not just. I mean, people are they gravitate towards actors because of how they relate to them. They don't need to know acting technique. They don't know how they get there. They just know that when they're there, they respond to them. And so that's what that note was for me, is be someone who resonates and not just takes up space.
That's a very powerful lesson. So through your formative years, and I'm sure later on in life as well, was your dad offering any advice? Was he volunteering advice, or would you come to him for advice? How big was his role in your development as an actor?
It went through many different phases. I mean, I think at first it was like, man, don't do this. It's hard. It's difficult. You really have to love it. Don't do it because I'm doing it, because remember, he was one of the first, so he suffered the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune more than most. And so he and my mother were very much against me being an actor. However, when you have someone who has passion and has a fire lit under them and, has seen certain things from the inside, it's best to go along.
Very true, very true.
It's best to support, because as soon as you start to deny or keep them from that passion, they're gonna make a beeline to it one way or another. So, to their credit, my parents were very then supportive when they saw that I was very serious about this. That this was really my calling. This was my passion. Born, of course, of the experience of seeing my father and being on set and being attracted to that life, of course. But the decision was mine independently, and they were good with it. And then at that point, then my father was very supportive. He was very excited for all of my wins and my successes. And I'm sorry now that he is no longer with me, so I cannot share those things. Whenever I go to Paramount Studios, I'm always walking by his old office. And I'm looking up at the office, and I'm going, hey, dude, check it out. We're still here. We're still kicking. We're still doing it, And that's the kind of relationship we had after they realized this is what Phil's going to be. And then when I started to become successful, of course, they were very, very proud.
So when you got to be in the Mission Impossible remake and you played Barney's son, Grant, what did your dad have to say about that?
It was in 88, I think, was when I got Mission. And my father and I knew that it was happening, but we didn't think that I would be hired because of how close. You know what I mean? He thought, there's just no way they're going to hire you for this. Then when I got it, we were just blown. I mean, we were just flabbergasted that I would get it. And of course, this was a show that was precipitated by a writer's strike. So the part that I actually got was the part that my father had. I actually got the part of Barney Collier in Mission Impossible. That's right. What I was hired to play. But when the writer's strike broke, then in their infinite wisdom, they made me the son of that character. And then my father came down and did 3 episodes. I mean, he did 1 episode in the first season and then a 2-parter in the second season. So he played with us down in Australia, which is where we shot it.
So that must be really interesting to actually be acting side by side with your dad.
Very interesting. And you're playing father-son, and this again, we're talking about iconic franchises. In this iconic franchise that he made famous with my Uncle Peter Graves, who I'm also starring in the show with, which is, again, surreal, that they would do Mission Impossible, that I would be an actor, that I would be of an age that, it was just too weird in a way that all that was happening. So it was a beautiful thing, but it was really kind of a dream for me, and I think for him. But he was always calling me every week saying, "Oh, son, you did a great job this week, but our show was better." our version was better.
Of course.
What are you guys doing? How come you guys did this? How come you did that? Yeah, good job, son, but, our show was better. Dads.
So after Trek, your sister, I know she pursued a few other interests in between, basically her next major gig, which would be sometime later. But you continue to book a lot more gigs here and there throughout the 70s and early 80s, including an appearance on
Mm-hmm.
Heart to Heart and Mr. Merlin.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1984, we come back to your next Star Trek appearance, and that's in the third motion picture, The Search for Spock. You played Cadet Foster, who at the start of the movie asks Captain Kirk if they're going to have a hero's welcome. It's a really great scene. It's one of the to me, one of the more memorable scenes, in fact, of that film. It always stands out to me as such a real somber moment. What was it like for you to share the screen with William Shatner now?
Oh, it's fantastic. It was even more thrilling to audition for Leonard Nimoy, who directed that episode, that film, TV guy, what I want to say, that film, and to audition for him. Leonard Nimoy was also on Mission Impossible. He came in after he had finished his stint on Star Trek, and was one of the crew on Mission Impossible. So we knew him very well, and it was like auditioning for your uncle, right? But he was gracious and wonderful and so supportive, and I got the job, which was just mind-boggling. And then the first day was the first day of the film for everybody, and it was like watching a reunion. In the makeup trailer, everybody was so thrilled to be together again, and to be on this adventure and this journey, and they were also excited that this was continuing, and who'd have thought, you know what I mean? It was great to be in there and listening to those conversations like a fly on the wall. And when I told them who I was, because they didn't know, it had been years, since 10 years easily, since they'd seen me, that I was Greg's son. It was all love. It was all family. And to do that scene with Mr. Shatner was, iconic. You're talking to one of the greatest. You're having a scene with one of the greatest television actors, arguably of all time. And the way that scene went and how he dealt with it with me in the scene was just and Leonard's direction to me was, I remember now as we're talking about it, his direction to me was, this is like your dad. You're asking your dad about getting a treat. And so if you watch the scene, you see in my face, it's this wide-eyed exuberance, are we going to get a lollipop kind of a thing. And it's very sweet at a time when, the captain or the admiral at the time is going through such tragedy. So I remember it vividly. Yes.
That's a brilliant way of direction, too. I love that line. So this is your first time now actually wearing a Starfleet uniform, and it's those really lovely, very dress kind of uniforms that they had in Star Trek 2 and throughout the rest of the original series. How did you like being fit into that costume, and did it fit well? We've talked to people who've been on Next Generation, and they've had mixed feelings about wearing the outfit. Some said it rode up on them, others said it was very comfy. But how are those outfits to wear?
I don't recall it being uncomfortable, so I don't think it was. I've done so many fittings for Star Trek iterations that one I don't quite remember. I remember the other ones much more, like the Klingon outfit that I wore. But I don't recall it being anything other than comfortable for me. I don't remember it being hot or binding in any way. No, not at all. It felt the way it looked, which was regal.
Yes, absolutely. That's like the one uniform I want to have to wear. It looks great.
I liked them a lot, yeah.
So there will be a few more years, of course, between your next time appearing in Trek, and since then you went on to do many, many other things. I'd like to talk to you today about a few of those, starting with a role that I think it's probably the first time I recognized you growing up as a kid. And, when I looked up that it was you who played this character, I was like, oh my God, it makes perfect sense, but you just completely disappear into the role. You're going to laugh at this one, I hope. Jackie Childs from Seinfeld. Yes.
I always laugh when people mention Jackie. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I love Jackie, and I think that, too often we get cast as what we look like, what we sound like, who people think we are, and as actors, sometimes we fall into the trap of samey, doing the same thing. And with Jackie, it was such a departure from some of the things I had been doing. I just relished it. And, I felt like I was always kind of a funny guy in real life, but I was never very good at comedy on TV or with a script because I was so serious with my approach to my work as a dramatic actor. And doing Seinfeld and some of the things I'd done before that, but truly doing Seinfeld just popped the top off of my comedic skills and my desire to do comedy. So I'm really thrilled whenever anybody says that they like Jackie, they love Jackie, or they didn't recognize that it was me, or when I say, or they ask me, well, what are you doing, or whatever, what would I know you from? And I say, well, you ever watch Seinfeld? And they go, yeah, I watch it all the time. I said, well, I played the lawyer Jackie Chow's like, what? You? So it's a great compliment to hopefully my craft. And working on that show was, we're talking about iconic stuff here, right? We're talking about the Star Trek franchise, which is iconic, as iconic a franchise as there is. And we're talking about the Seinfeld franchise, which is, again, as iconic a franchise as there is. And I've been very fortunate and very blessed to be in those rooms, be a part of that energy, contribute in a small way to a very, very large monster. And so I love Jackie, and I miss him, and I'm always happy to play him whenever I can.
Yeah, Star Trek and Seinfeld are going to be two shows that live on in syndication until the end of time, I believe. So
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Do you have any memories of working with any of the cast? Because, again, that's such a stellar cast to be working with.
Oh, of course, yeah. I have many, many, many memories of, when I first did the show, I got cast before Jackie as Mayor David Dinkins' press secretary. It was during the very contentious New York mayoral race, and of course Seinfeld was set in New York, and it was the one between Dinkins and no, not Koch. Was it Cuomo? No, not
possibly.
Cuomo. It might have been, but the episode was basically who liked a certain flavor of yogurt. So they didn't know who was going to win the election. So they shot one with me as Dinkins' press secretary and one with another actor as the other press secretary, and the other guy, Dinkins, lost. So I didn't get on that episode, but it put me on their radar. And Larry David directed the scene that that was going to be placed in the episode. So Larry was familiar with me. So when I went to audition for Seinfeld, they were aware of me, but it was such a different character. Jackie was such a high flying act that when I did the audition, we'll just go right to that. When I did the audition for them, it was a very hot day in the Valley, which is where CBS Radford is. And I'm doing my thing, and I'm doing so you're on with your friend, and so what happened, I'm doing my Jackie thing, and they're laughing, and so Jerry, he's laughing, he holds up his hand, and he goes, stop. And, in the middle of my audition, he's telling me to stop, and he goes over to the thermostat, and he turns the air conditioning up, and he says, you're so funny, man, you're making me sweat. He would go on, continue. So then I kind of knew that I had it, and my first day on the show, you have 5 days to shoot a sitcom. So the first day is a table read, and you do the table read, and boom, then you kind of break to your corners, and you go to your scene, and then the director's there, and your scene mate's there, and you start rehearsing. Well, I was trying to do different things because I had 5 days to figure this out. I'd never played this character before. It's such an extreme character, very different from me. Jerry is sitting there watching, and I'm starting to do different stuff, and he goes, hold on, and he's not directing, he's just watching. He goes, whoa, again, like they're stopping me in the middle. Are you doing something different? What are you doing? I said, there's 5 days to do this. I got to figure stuff out. And he goes, no. You used those 5 days to do exactly what you did in my office. That is why you were here. I said, all right. Okay, man, I can do that. So the Jackie that you see is the Jackie that I literally walked in with on the audition, the day that I auditioned, Jackie Childs.
So I want to talk to you now about one of the favorite non-Trek shows we like to ask about. And your sister was also in an episode of this show as well, and that's Murder, She Wrote. And you were in the episode of Virtual Murder. And I love hearing Angela Lansbury stories. So do you have any good memories from working on that show?
I think Angela Lansbury was as nervous in certain scenes as any of the actors were. I mean, this was a woman who took her craft very seriously, as fun as she was, as whimsical as she was, as Jessica Fletcher. She and her husband produced this show, so they were also owners of the show. I have never been with a legend like that was so down to earth and so sweet and so unassuming and just brilliant, just a brilliant person to be around. And that was a really wonderful show. Kevin Sorbo was one of the guest stars on that show. Rami Zeta was one of the guest stars on that show. Kate McNeil, who I ended up working with on WIOU later. It was a wonderful week of work. Just a great episode to be a part of. And I was the MacGuffin. not to blow it for anybody, but I
Spoiler
wasn't
alert.
the murderer, but I was the MacGuffin, and to be a part of a murder mystery like that was great. I hadn't played in that universe before, so that was wonderful.
Yeah, I've heard just nothing but positive stories about her. I mean, you look at the guest list she gets in every episode, and it's just filled with like either people who were the big names back in the day, or folks who are up and
Or
comers, young
became.
actors. Yeah.
Absolutely, and you wanted so desperately to. I remember auditioning. I wanted so desperately to get it because it was one of those shows. You knew if you got it, like man, you're playing with the other people who are going to be in it. It'd be awesome. Sherman Augustus was in it, who played another actor who's now on Badlands. He played a cop on that. So I just remember so many wonderful people who were in it, and she was terrific. I can't imagine anybody having a coarse or bad word to say about Angela Lansbury. I just can't imagine it.
So what's it like actually sharing the screen with her one-on-one? Because you were in scenes with her, right?
Oh yeah, I had a scene just she and I where I'm putting stuff in my car and I look guilty as heck and she's like, well, what's the real deal here? So it was yeah, it's great. It was on my reel for years until I finally had to take it off because it was like 20 years old.
So, did you guys like have any rehearsals or any discussions beforehand of what you're gonna do, or any kind of notes from her?
No. I mean, she was another actor. We had a director. He was the one who told us what. She didn't get into that. And that's something that I've learned from real professional, established actors is that do your job. Directors are hired to do their job. If you have anything you want to talk to your other actor about, talk to them, personally about whatever. But leave the directing to the directors, and that's what she did. And we spoke about things of life, but not about how to play the scene. That was the director's job. Then we came in, we did our best, and print, move on.
So as mentioned at the start of this interview, you have been in so many things, and we're not going to go through all of them today, but just one other last thing I wanted to touch on before we jump into, again, Trek, was that you were on an episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air back in '93. And I'd love to hear some stories about that, because I don't think I've interviewed anybody yet who's been on The Fresh Prince.
Well, here you go. Fresh Prince. So, at the time, of course, Will was big. That was a big show. I was a part of a group of actors who wasn't that thrilled that Will Smith had gotten that part, because here we are busting our ass, doing the best we can, going to class, doing commercials, doing photo shoots, getting shot down, maybe getting a part. And this dude comes from the rap world. This is when it first started, right? From the rap world and snags a plum roll on this show. What? So I went to the show a little bit with that attitude, and I told Will this. I told him that on the set. But when I went to the table read, and I heard the fun and the funny, and I saw the relationship between Will and Alfonso Ribeiro, and Will was literally, they were doing something, I'll never forget it. They were working on something, and the thing was, I kid you not, if we say these jokes louder, are they funnier? So the whole table read, when they got to their joke, they would just almost yell it. And it was funny because it was so weird and so inappropriate. But I remember Tyra Banks was on the show, and I was like, who is this beautiful young woman?
Oh, you were in the Tyra Banks season. Lucky you.
Yeah, she was just gorgeous. I had never seen this person before. So, she's playing, of course, Will's on and off again love interest girlfriend thing. And Will was phenomenal. I mean, really, one of the smartest guys in Hollywood, Will Smith. He was accepted to MIT. That's how smart this guy is. Every time we had a break, we would go in his room and play chess. And he's a good chess player. I mean, I'm a good chess player, but he's a great chess player. So we would play chess. And one day we're playing chess, and he looks at his watch, and he goes, Phil, you're going to have to go because I have my advisors coming in, and we have a meeting. I'm going to tell you right now, when he said that, he opened the door, and I saw all his advisors come in. I looked at him. He closed the door, and I'm like, that dude is going to be massive. He's going to be massive. And that's exactly what happened. He became huge, obviously. That is one of the most rerun episodes of television I have ever done in my career. Everybody has seen it.
Oh, that's awesome. You got to show that just, you keep getting the royalty checks for many years later on. That's got to be a good feeling to have. And just know that you worked in such a fun show, too.
Oh, had a great time. Had a great time on that show. Again, that was one of the shows where if you watch that show, I was still in my serious mode. Serious, still trying to be the really good-looking guy who's serious and blah, blah, boom, boom. I wanted to have my own television series and do all that stuff. I was not necessarily that adept at comedy, but doing shows like that helped me because they were so much fun to do. The people who were on the shows, Karen Parsons and Tatiana Ali, who I ended up playing her father in a show called Love That Girl years later. They were so welcoming and so fun to be around. It was such a great show, and it helped. I'm like, man, I love this. This is great. So it really helped me understand and find my comedy chops. So I thank them for that.
And, we're talking about Tyra Banks here, who is, of course, a amazing actress, and trying to find a polite way to dance around saying how hot she is, but yeah, I said it. But you also have to have a lot of time with Karen Parsons on screen as her love interest in that episode, right? Or someone who's pursuing her, rather, and she's another gorgeous woman who's a very great actress. I don't think gets talked about enough. What do you remember about working with Karen?
I loved it. And in fact, we loved working together so much. She ended up doing a show called Lush Life with Lori Petty, and she hired me to be her ex-husband in one of the episodes. Unfortunately, I did the episode, but it was right around the time that my father passed away. And they called me, and I was supposed to start that Monday, and they said, if you don't want to do it, we understand completely. We'll work with you at another time, and we'll take the week off. We'll do another episode next week. Boom, boom. And I said, no, my father would hate it if I didn't work because of him. No, I'm coming in. And I came in, and I had one of the best weeks of my life there. She's fantastic. She was one of the producers of the show with Lori, I believe. And Lori and I are still really good friends, and I don't see Karen much at all. But I know she's doing well. And this is a funny business because you don't get a chance to really connect on a long-term basis with that many people. So it really is dependent on the moments you spend with them when you have the moments that you spend with them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so that it's such a transitory business. We go from job to job to job to job, unless you work with these people for 5-6 years, on a show, which is rare, very hard to do. These are the experiences we have, and I've had some really classic, beautiful experiences with some of the most iconic players in our business. And again, I'm eternally grateful.
Trek Untold will return momentarily. Trek Untold is brought to you by Triple Fiction Productions. If you're a Star Trek cosplayer looking for props, or toy collector looking to spice up your shelves, Triple Fiction Productions has you covered. Triple Fiction Productions produces affordable and unique 3D printed Trek-inspired products from the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and the movies. You can expect the same amount of care and attention to detail in any of the items in their catalog, whether it's a prop replica for use in a fan film, or part of a cosplay, or accessories and playsets for figures from Playmates, Migos, or Diamond Select. Own your very own tricorder or phaser rifle with working lights, the bridge of the Enterprise E for your Playmates figures, or any other item from countless species and ships from the Star Trek universe. All products are 3D printed in the USA and are constantly evolving and improving based on fan feedback. To learn more about their products, visit them at triple-fictionproductions.net or on Facebook at facebook.com/triplefictionproductions. Triple Fiction Productions, taking Star Trek where no 3D printer has gone before.
What's going on, everybody? It's your girl's favorite artist, Josie's Boy.
And I'm Alexis A. McCoy.
And we are the hosts of Call Me When It's Over.
We are more than just a podcast. We are a culture cast.
Yes, and you can check us out every single Saturday with a brand new episode. We're available on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Play.
And you can catch us on our homepage at RigsWorksNetwork.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at _Call Me When It's Over.
That's right. And as always, speak up, speak out.
And leave your ego at the door.
We now return to Trek Untold.
So Phil, let's go ahead warp speed now to 1996, and we're going to talk about your first appearance in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. That's in Season 5, the episode Looking for Parmok in All the Wrong Places. And you got to play the Klingon warrior Topak. So back when you first auditioned for this role, did you know you were auditioning to be a Klingon?
Yes, I did. I was aware. And I believe Andrew Robinson was the director of the episode. And so my goal was to scare him. My goal was to to shock him. You know, again, remember we were talking about, you know, make the interesting choices.
Yeah.
So that was my desire. I mean, I knew my lines, I knew the dialogue, I knew all that stuff. But so did everybody else, right? Everybody else knew the dialogue, they knew the lines, they had all. But what was going to get me over? What was the engine? What was my motivation? My motivation was to scare him. You know, this guy was a bad enough Klingon that he gets kicked out of the Klingon Federation at the end. That's how horrible he is. He's so bad, Klingons don't even want him. So I had to do something. So when I went into the room and I did my stuff, I literally didn't even look at the casting director who's reading the dialogue as Quark or whoever I was supposed to be acting opposite. I literally threw every bit of line and dialogue to Andrew Robinson. I don't know if he remembers it, but he was like on the edge. His eyes were like bugging out, and he was on the edge of his seat like I was going to attack him, and I got it. You know, I got it. So, you know, I guess there is something to that note about, you know, making the interesting choice. But what I really remember about that are two things. One was the wardrobe was with the costume fitting, which is what we were talking about for the other show, the other episode. But this I do remember vividly because those are such binding costumes. They're overlaid with leather and, you know, so much brocading, and oh my God, it was almost unbearable. And then the head cast that I had to do for all of the facial prosthetics, right? And the teeth. They give you Klingon teeth, right? So they do a casting of your mouth as well. And then they make a bridge for you of Klingon teeth.
Oh, wow. Custom Klingon teeth.
It's custom Klingon teeth, which they keep. You don't keep anything. They keep it all.
Which is so bizarre, because it's like, are they going to reuse that for someone else? Like, what are they doing with it?
Well, they probably have a history, a museum of Klingon stuff. You know what I mean? Why not? But what I do, the most fun thing that I did on that show was they gave me an actual batleth to bring home.
Oh, wow.
To work with. Actual heavy-ass, pointy, nasty batleth that I brought home to work on the choreography that they showed me. So I take this batleth out. I live at the beach. I take it out to the lifeguard station. And I wish I had footage of me working this thing, man. I was a ninja with this bad boy. And I learned to use it so well, I don't believe they used the double other than when I was getting hit, right?
Yeah.
So I was really proud of that. I was really, really proud of that. And again, it was a wonderful experience. And Armin Shimmerman and I are really good friends. I don't see him all the time again, but we had the same voiceover agent. I'd see him quite a bit at the office, and we talked about that all the time. And one of my favorite convention photos is a picture of me as Thopak, leaning over Quark, just spewing the most horrible, vile things at him. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that it was just you guys doing that battle, because as I was watching the episode recently, I was like, man, where's the double? I was trying to look for him, and it was just you guys. So that was very impressive.
Yep.
So yeah, I'd like to hear a little bit more actually about working with Armin, because we've had other guests who've worked with him in scenes on DS9, and they've described him as being like a very reactive actor, very open actor. How would you describe working with him?
Armin is he's very present. You know, he's there. You look at him, he looks back. He is unpredictable. He's a bit of a live wire, right? And I think that's the choice he made for Quark. You know, Quark is a bit like a cricket on a hot stove, right? He's bouncing all over the place, trying to sell. He's a hustler. He's that guy. And that's how Armin played him. Armin is far more intellectual, obviously, far more cerebral. He is a Shakespearean savant as an actor, as a craftsperson. But in the scenes, he was just couldn't be better. It was so, again, fun. I guess fun is the watchword for me in all of this, because that is what I aspired to have as a child. That's what I thought I wanted. I did not want to work in a 9-to-5 office. I did not want to work in a job where I couldn't play, where I was working to then go play. I wanted to play while I worked. And I realized that that's exactly what I've created. Everything we've been talking about, everything that I do, all that I am, is about working to play. And it has been incredibly successful. So working with people like Armin, who just plays and is a great playmate, I can't get enough, man. It's great.
That's a great way to put it. Now, by the way, was this role your first time doing heavy prosthetics for a role?
No.
Do you remember what the first one was?
Well, heavy makeup was Young and the Restless. I played a white guy.
That's pretty heavy.
Very heavy. With a fake wig and a heavy eyebrow makeup. The makeup wasn't prosthetic, but it was as thick as you could make it without it being prosthetic. I did that for, it must have been months. It felt like years, but months on the show. I did a head cast for Mission Impossible, but that was a little bit after I did that. Perhaps that was the first time on my face prosthetics, but on my body I've had scars and bullet holes and stab wounds and stuff like that. But yeah, probably the first time I'd had a facial prosthetic, and then I did it. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but yes.
Yeah, we'll get to the Jem'Hadar in a moment, but yeah, I was just curious, this being your first time wearing all of this kind of seriously heavy-duty facial prosthetics as opposed to just like heavy makeup, did it affect your acting in any way? I mean, from my point of view, it didn't, but I'm just curious what it is from your perspective.
Of course. It's you don't have to guess who your character is. You look in the mirror, you know who it is. You feel your forehead, you feel the ridges, you know what it is. You touch your teeth, you know what's going on. You wear the wardrobe. It all lends to the reality, the given reality we're trying to present, right? And the more aids you have like that, the better. I love it. I rely on it. I lean into it. I lean into the characters because you are being given such great assistance with these amazing makeup artists and these amazing costumers and stunt people and special effects people that are there to help make the illusion real. Yes, it's a fantastic way to play because you can't escape your character. You can't just get out of your wardrobe, You got to take the whole thing off. That takes hours. So you're in it to win it, man.
And so we mentioned this episode was directed by Andrew Robinson, who we all know as Garak. We all know and love him as Garak, of course. And this was also the first episode of Star Trek he had directed, but not his first time directing anything ever. But how would you describe the way that Andrew directed?
He's very energetic. He's got a great energy. And you need it. Especially with an episode like Looking for Parmok, because if you remember, almost everybody's in that episode. I mean, every cast member is in that episode having some sort of romantic entanglement of one sort or another. And so your mind has to be quite agile as a director to compartmentalize and make sure everything's straight and up to date, and you're giving everybody the right amount of motivation, not too much, not too little, the right amount of comedic, tension for Armin and myself, the right amount of to me. And I found him to be incredibly supportive. He was so excited that I'd come back and had all those moves because it made our shooting day quicker, right? You don't have to just take me out, put in the stunt guy, all right, cut, Phil, stand there, close up. You could do it all in one take. So he was really excited about that, and I think he was really excited about directing the episode. And I found it to be terrific. Did I know it was his first episode? I think I knew intellectually it was his first episode of Star Trek, directing that, but it didn't show. I didn't feel it. He was just as accomplished as any other director I'd worked with. So, and we brought him so much. I mean, the characters were so full. I mean, Joseph Rusk was in it, and the lady who played Grilka was fantastic. I mean, they're all such good actors. You almost have to get out of the way as a director. You're working with Armin Shimmerman. I mean, you don't want to get in that guy's way. And then I was bringing so much as Thopak that he just was like, all right, and action.
Now, most important question about this role you had as Thopak, did you get to keep that batleth that you were training with?
Oh, no, like I said, they keep everything.
That's disappointing.
Yes, I might be able to get one from a convention, but I'll have to pay for it.
Yeah, because I imagine you can't easily sneak a batleth off the set, so yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's very tough.
So you returned again to Deep Space Nine one season later, this time as a Jem'Hadar soldier, the Third Remata Klan, from the episode Rocks and Shoals. Very good episode. How did you get called back for this one? Did they just decide that, hey, Phil was a good Klingon, I bet he'll be a good Jem'Hadar too?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, they remember me, of course, from that role. Third Remata Klan was a much bigger role than Thopak was, and so I auditioned for this again. And what was told to me in the auditioning room was the Klingons think that they're the baddest dudes in the universe. The Jem'Hadar actually are. So they said, they don't have to spew, they don't have to externalize they know who they are. They're born this way. It is the nature of things, right? So if you watch it, it's a very quiet performance. It's a very contained performance, like 180 degrees antithetical to Thopak. And I think that was the power of it, right? It's a very tragic character, you know. He's never going to rise through the ranks because his first and second are dead, and the Vorta is a traitor. So, I mean, it was a terrific episode. Each episode has its own dynamics, right? Each character has their own dynamics, and to work with this character opposite Avery Brooks. Now we've talked about Angela Lansbury and Armin Shimmerman and my father and William Shatner, and again, I'm one of the luckiest guys on the planet. I've had a chance to work with some of the greatest characters, the greatest character actors that my industry has. So working with Avery taught me a lot. Working with him in that cave, these two resonant voices, was a special moment, I think, not just for me, but for everybody who witnessed that scene. And it was another great memory. Another great memory.
So which was more difficult for you to wear, the Klingon makeup or the Jem'Hadar gear?
Jem'Hadar, no doubt.
What was more worse about that one? Is it more constricting?
Yeah, it's a complete head thing, man. With the Klingon, you're wearing a bit of a wig and then a skull thing. You got a ridged nose and teeth. With the Jem'Hadar, it's your whole head, all the way down to your neck. And then the brocaded leather is much more intense and much more, it doesn't breathe at all, is what I want to say. And we were shooting in Sun Valley, California, on one of the hottest days ever recorded, in a rock quarry that was all white.
Oh yeah. We've heard a similar story from Caitlin Hopkins, actually, back in our debut episode. She was also in a DS9 episode as a Vorta with a bunch of Jem'Hadar guys. And same thing, they were doing the outdoor shoot, and she just said she was in the middle of a scene. All of a sudden, the Jem'Hadar guy just dropped from dehydration and passed out.
Yeah, our stunt coordinator, who's supposed to be the toughest guy on the set, our stunt coordinator had to be given an IV.
Oh wow!
So yeah, it's grueling. Doing these shows is hard. It is so hard. So if you love them, honor them for the work that they put in and how difficult these challenges are. The working hours are intolerable, just about. They're working. 12-hour days are easy. You're talking about 16-hour days, man, and then you're flipping the script to a night shoot, and you're having to wear these outfits. Michael Dorn in that for years. These are warriors. These people who are doing these shows. I'm honored to work with them.
So Avery Brooks is easily my favorite captain in Star Trek history as Captain Cisco. What was it like to work with Avery? I've heard that he's very professional. He really very much embodies the role of a captain, an authority-style figure.
Avery and I got along great. I've heard so many stories about Avery, some good, some not so good. I get it, man. It is tough. Like I just said, this work is hard. He is a consummate actor. He's incredibly well trained. He was a big fan of my father's, so he and I got along great. My father was one of his idols. He was one of the people who helped him decide he wanted to be an actor. So we have a very special relationship, and whenever I see him anywhere, it's all love. We're family. He again, in the scene, we are adversaries, but we're equals. And when you come into a show as a guest star that is established, that is a Star Trek offshoot, and you're working with the number one on the call sheet, right? It can be daunting because you're the new kid at school. You're not even a kid at school. You're a foreign exchange student. You're leaving at the end of the week. So I've been treated so many different ways by so many different people, but people like Avery treat you with respect. They treat you with honor. If you have the skill that makes them respect you, they will treat you as an equal. And that's exactly how he was on the set. He was as professional as any actor I've ever run across, as talented, as present, and we killed that scene. I love that scene, and I have only beautiful things to say about him. He made me better in the scene because of his power and his range and his grounding. I work with that guy anytime.
Now, this episode was directed by Michael Vajar, who I thought just did an amazing job as well. It's such a very complex episode. I enjoyed a lot of the choices he made visually, and I'd like to hear, working with him as an actor to director kind of relationship. How was he?
Well, Mike Vajar had done an episode or two of Mission Impossible down in Australia. That's how I knew him.
Oh, okay. So you already had a connection with him.
I already had a connection with him. I actually worked with his cousin, Rudy Vajar, on Young and the Restless back in the day. So, these connections are very, very tight. It literally is 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Mike is a workmanlike director, is what I would say. I don't know if he'd appreciate that or not, but he is a workmanlike director. There's a lot of moving parts on a Star Trek episode. There's a lot of technological stuff. There's a lot of gobbledygook dialogue that actors have to spout and recite. And so you can get caught up in all that stuff, or you can make it work for you. And Michael made it work for him. And, it was a very, again, workmanlike set. There isn't any one bit of direction that I can recall from him that stuck in my head. And sometimes that's good, because, again, in TV, a director doesn't want to insert himself, and it's like a ref in an NBA game or a ref in an NFL game. You don't want to notice them, right? You want them to be there to make sure the game goes well and make sure that the players play at their optimum level, but you don't really want them to be obtrusive. And Michael never was, and that's I guess what I have to say about him. We can talk about other people who are far more impactful, but Mike is that kind of guy. Do your thing. I'll be over here at Beta Village. You need me? You let me know.
So finally, your last Star Trek appearance was in Season 6 of Star Trek Voyager, where you played Lieutenant John Kelly, a NASA astronaut who's also a childhood hero of Chakotay, and you're basically a little bit more closer to our contemporary times. You're in Voyager now. How did you get called back for this time around to be actually showing your face and not just be covered up?
I don't recall this audition, to be honest with you. I don't know if I auditioned for this. I think I was given this role. It was written by Brannon Braga. And I think Brannon wanted me for it. I cannot remember specifically. Here's what I remember. One of the best episodes of television I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful episode. I gotta say, I used to watch this one, and I remember the first time seeing it, I was like, this isn't that interesting. But then as it goes along, your performance is just a real amazing knockout piece.
Thank you. I work with Robert Picardo as a director on that. And Robert and I were both students of John Lenn, the acting coach I mentioned before. So Robert and I were very familiar with each other, and we were familiar with our process. So now when you ask me about what was it like to work with a director, I'm going to jump ahead and get to that, because, like I said, you work with some directors, and sometimes they resonate with you, and they show up, and sometimes they just don't for whatever reason. It's not their fault. It's just the nature of the experience, right? But Bobby was, I'm so sorry about this tree trimmer who just showed up at my house as well.
That's why you need a batleth.
Bobby and I worked terrifically together. I had no one to work with in that episode, as you know. I was all by myself. And so the person that I worked with was Bob Picardo. His direction was so nuanced. His direction was so humane. Because remember, in this episode, it's 7 of 9 who needs to figure out why she's clueless as to why human beings are so tied to their history. So Janeway tasks her with going through my log to understand, because I'm that linchpin between the Federation and NASA, right? I'm the first one to ever see alien technology, alien ships. No one knows it because I'm in this spatial anomaly, and I'm the only one who does. So when they find this, they then find out what happened to me, and 7 of 9 is the one tasked with that. So that's an incredibly human road to be traveling down, and to have someone like Bob Picardo, who was also on the show, of course, as the Doctor, direct it, was perfect, because he is one of the sweetest, kindest, nicest, most talented people I've ever been around in my life. I've seen him do things in class that just absolutely destroyed me. So to work with him was a joy. One night we are, and I'll try and get through this without, late, early in the morning, and there's no one there, and he and I are rapping, and our cars happen to be parked next to each other in the water tank, which is where you park on the Paramount lot, and it's maybe 2 in the morning, and he and I kind of show up at our cars from opposite ends of the studio, and he comes over to me, and he puts his hands on my shoulders, and he says, "You have embodied every lesson that our acting coach ever taught us, and I'm so proud of you." And as you can hear, one of the greatest compliments I've ever been given by anybody in my life. And so that episode is really special for me, and so is Bob Picardo.
I've got a tear in my eye too right now, so thank you very much for sharing that one.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So towards the end of this episode also, your character has a monologue about his father, and I'm wondering, as you were filming that scene, were you thinking about your father, who I believe had just passed away maybe a year or two before that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. It's again, right? We're using things that move us as actors. We're trying to blur the line between the thing that we all know is not real, right, and the reality of our emotional life. So, yeah, you use the things that are closest to you, that you are most familiar with, and so, of course, my relationship with my father was the thing that I knew best, and no acting involved, right?
So was it tough to kind of have this monologue with essentially, you talking to your dad? Was it actually tough to get through that one?
Not that I can recall. No, there were other things that were a little tougher, but not that. That in itself was actually, as I recall, was a little joyous, inside for me. I forget how Kelly felt about it, but for me it was like, man, I'm giving my dad a chance to give him a little honor here, give him his due. And then I was doing Star Trek on the Paramount lot, where I was 7 years old, doing that episode, where I grew up, learning about the business. It was perfect, right?
Oh yeah, it's a great role to have. It's a beautiful episode. Highly recommend that one. So was this your favorite Trek appearance?
I think so. I say I think so because there are so many that are fantastic, right? I mean, Star Trek 3 was fantastic. But this eclipses it because of who the character John Kelly was, as I explained, working with Robert Picardo, playing myself again in a Star Trek franchise piece, and what the episode meant, the humanity. Every single episode of Star Trek is a morality play. It just is. It has to do with morals and personal integrity, and if you distill it, you'll see that all of that exists in every single episode of whatever franchise or offshoot of Star Trek there is. So the level of humanity in that episode is so great. It's so deep. Yes, it is my favorite one of all.
Yeah, I recommend it for anybody listening. If you want to go have a good cry, go watch that episode right now. It's a great episode. So they say in Star Trek, the kiss of death for an actor is the minute you show your actual human face. And you're an actor who's eluded that twice because, again, your first 2 appearances, it was you not wearing any makeup. But unfortunately here, this Voyager episode is your final appearance in the Trek world. But were you ever called back to audition for any other roles in any other Trek shows?
No. And, I've worked with Eugene Roddenberry, Rod Roddenberry, the son of Gene Roddenberry. And I've told him, look, man, I'm ready to come back. I'm ready to do it. Let's do it. Come on now. Bring me on to Enterprise or whatever's out there right now. I'm your man. I have not heard from them, but that's fine. I'm very busy.
Well, we need to get you and your sister back as Klingons in Discovery or something. That's what we'll do.
I would love it.
So now, me being the mega giant nerd that I am, we don't have time to talk about every single one of these, of course, today, but in addition to all your time in Trek, you've been in many other geeky franchises, including the Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles, where you played Miles Dyson. You've been Dr. Sweet in Disney's Atlantis. You've been in Smallville as Martian Manhunter, and you have done a ton of voiceover work, a lot of times with DC and Marvel characters. But the one I'd like to hear about is Vandal Savage from Justice League. So how did you get the voice? How did you find that voice for Vandal Savage?
To me, Vandal Savage is a smooth criminal, right? He's an
put
immortal. He's almost bored with himself, in a way. And so he determines that he's going to conquer the world today, right? He wakes up, and he's like, what am I going to do? I'm going to just try to rule the world, I guess. Yeah, again. And as I thought about him in those terms, the voice came to me, this really poetic, lyrical, almost intoxicating voice that you would develop over millennia, right? You couldn't be excited about everything all the time. You probably wouldn't be excited about anything again. And so there's a certain jaundiced view of the world, of the universe that he has. And I hope that that's what the vocal quality I gave him registered as. It's this, yes, once again, I must rule the world. And who does that other than a guy who can't be killed and is going to live forever? And what other projects are you going to? You're not going to knit. So why not? That's how I came up with the voice, really, honestly. I'm a comic book fan. I have 20,000 comic books.
Oh, now you got to tell me about that.
Yeah, so, I have the same comics that I bought in 1966 when I was 7.
Oh, wow.
In a Cleveland drugstore, Captain America and Iron Man. I got them in my collection. So all this stuff that we're talking about, whether it's DC Universe stuff or Klingon Star Trek stuff or even Star Wars stuff or any of these things that are fantastical, I have loved it my whole life. I have literally been a fan of this my whole life, and I'm given an opportunity to express that fandom in the most unique way. My comic book collection has been paid for several times over from the work I've done in the comic book world. My mother would just be blown away right now about all that stuff. So, yeah, I know Vandal Savage. I know these characters. I know Superman. I know Batman. I know Martian Manhunter. I know these characters. I know Miles Dyson. I know them. I love them. I'm a fan of theirs. So when I'm asked to audition or play these characters, I figure I have a leg up more than the other actor who's going to go in the room, because I know that I've been a fan of these things since I was a child and will continue to be.
So I got to ask then, what is the grail piece in your collection right now?
When you have 20,000, it's hard to have one.
Can't just choose one kid.
I have a couple 1948 Captain Americas.
Ah.
I have every single issue of the original Silver Surfer, 1 through 18. I have Fantastic Four, 5 through 100. I have, V for Vendetta, the original Alan Moore printing. I have, what else do I have? I got a bunch of stuff, man. Daredevil 2 through 50. I don't have one. But my favorite ones are the ones like I have a signed Jack Kirby collection, or a signed Frank Miller Sin City, original Volume 1. That stuff, I like that stuff. That stuff where I have a lot of Neil Adams signed Green Lantern, Green Arrow stuff.
Oh yeah, Neil's great.
He's fantastic. What else?
Are you a guy that gets your stuff graded, or do you leave things the way they are?
I have it all compiled and alphabetized and numerologically put together, and I have it in a database, but I haven't had it appraised at all.
You're such a nerd. I'm like, this is really awesome now. I didn't know that beforehand.
Yeah, I'm into it. I don't read them as much now as I used to, of course, but but like I'm doing a job now that I just got. I can't talk about, but I just got it, and it's very intense and it's very complex. And I remember most of it. But what I actually did was I went right to my library and I pulled out the issues that I needed to look at in order to fill in the gaps in my memory. And I was like, oh yeah, I get this. I know what this universe is. So I've got the best reference library in the world for that.
All right, well, I'm hoping you can talk about this role because most recently you're now in DC's Doom Patrol TV series. You're playing Cyborg's dad.
Silas Stone.
Yeah, Silas Stone. So, yeah, Doom Patrol is a bizarre, unique show. I've just started watching it recently, and I'm pretty into it. How do you like being on Doom Patrol right now?
It's one of my, I keep saying this. It seems like it's one of the best shows I've ever done. Again, it's one of the most. God, what do I want to say? It's so dimensional. It's got so much going on. It's so well shot. It's so well acted. The special effects are out of control. I love Silas Stone. I love Vic Stone. I love and hate their relationship. It's so dysfunctional. Diane Guerrero is brilliant. April Bowlby is incandescent. Timothy Dalton's a great scene mate. And then you got, the people like Matt Zuck, who plays Mr. Negative, the Negative Man, in the bandages. I mean, these are the guys who actually do it in the suit. And then you have a guy named Riley Shanahan, who plays Robot Man in the suit on stage. And then you have the voices of Matt Bomer, who voices Negative Man, and then Brendan Fraser, who voices Robot Man. It's an incredibly diverse and dense show. I love it. And I want to play Silas Stone a lot more. I want him to bring me back a lot more. I dig it.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting show, very unique. But before we wrap this interview up today, there is one other role. Again, of the nearly 200 you've had, there's just one other bizarre role I've got to ask about. Jingle All the Way, Gale Force. That's all I have to say to you. You know exactly where I'm going. The Weatherman.
What's the question?
There is no question. I'm just saying, Gale Force, Jingle All the Way. What do you got for me, Phil?
Gale Force. Gale Force was one of the two hosts of the parade that is in the movie Jingle All the Way. I was cast in it by a guy named Brian Levant, who was the director, who is one of the most fun guys I know. Brian is a volleyball fanatic, and so I live in Manhattan Beach. I'm literally looking out at my beach right now with volleyball courts everywhere, with nobody playing because of the time that we're living in. But I got Jingle All the Way. We're shooting at Jingle All the Way. We're not even close to getting to our close-ups. We're weeks away. They're shooting Arnold down in the parade route. The second day or third day, the AD goes, or the PA goes, the director wants to see you. What? Wants to see me? For what? I mean, I'm not even on camera. No, you got to go now. It's lunchtime. You got to go now. Okay, all right. So they put me they have a golf cart there for me. Put me in the golf cart. I go to New York Street, Universal, which is totally, decked out in, winter gear and Christmas stuff. And there on Main Street, on the street, is the director with the head cameraman and a couple other assistant camera guys, and they're bumping the volleyball. I'm in a full suit, and he's like, "Come on, let's bump the ball. I heard you play." I'm like, what? Yeah, I heard you play. Okay, so I take my jacket off. I'm bumping the ball. They're like, "Wow, you're good." I'm like, "Yeah." So lunch is over, and we're still bumping. And we had 2,000 extras on New York Street at Universal, waiting for us to finish peppering the ball to shoot. And so every day at lunch, we would pepper and bump and do things. I become like great friends with Brian Levant. I play volleyball tournaments at his house all the time. It's so wild. And Arnold couldn't have been nicer. He was such a cool dude. He came over to my castmate and I, and just was so lovely on our last day, and told us that he'd noticed us and how funny we were in dailies, and it was great, man. It's again, it's killer experience. Gale Force, so stupid.
So Phil, best experience and worst experience on a movie set or a TV show set?
Best is very hard. Best. Okay, I'll guess this one, right? Here's one. Okay, it's the wrap party of the Love Boat, the new Love Boat.
The next generation.
Yeah, the next wave. Produced by Aaron Spelling, right? So it's the wrap party. And Robert Urich is introducing all the cast members to the people who are at the party. And, he goes to introduce me, and Aaron says, no, I want to do this one. So he grabs Aaron Spelling grabs the microphone from Robert Urich, and he starts saying, sometimes an actor comes across your plate and they can just do it all. They can do drama, they can do comedy, and they're handsome, and they're smart. I hate this guy. And everybody starts laughing. And he says, one of the most talented actors I've ever worked with, you guys know him, Phil Morris. Aaron Spelling. That was wonderful. That was seminal, memorable, right? The worst is easy, but I can't use names because they're big stars. So I'm working on this movie, and I had just finished an episode of JAG, which was a military show, and it was another great episode for me. I was the major guest star, just so terrific. So I leave that show, and I go to this movie the next week, and I'm working with these actors, and they're big-time actors. One of the reasons I did the movie was because they were big actors. The director's a big-time director. And here I am, working with them, and it's my first day on the show, on the movie. I'm in a makeup trailer, and the makeup artist is the same makeup artist who used to do me for Young and the Restless, same guy who made me into a white guy on Young and so fantastic. So I'm sitting next to two of the stars of this movie, and he introduces me to the two stars, and they say, whatever, and they go back to their conversation. So on the set, we're shooting this scene, and it was on a plane, and they're using what's called a gimbal, which is a rig that actually makes you look like you're in a plane and it's moving and it's being buffeted or whatever. So it was hot in the valley, and the two principals are in the main cabin, and I'm supposed to come in during this storm and tell them it's a lightning storm and it's going to be okay. The captain says it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. And then I'm bone out, right? And really, I just had like 2 pops of that. That's really all I had to do. I had 3 days on this movie, but I did it because these are big stars and I wanted to be in their presence. Well, these 2 stars couldn't have been bigger, fill in the blanks. They were just terrible. They couldn't get their lines right. It took 10, 12 takes just to get their lines out. We're doing this time and time again. I'm coming in the cabin, doing my thing, getting up, boom. All right, so the director tells the operators of the gimbal to kick up the gimbal a little bit. It's not bucking enough. It's not kicking up enough. All right, so they do. Well, it was so hot that there was an air conditioning vent that I had to literally hold on them because there's no room for me in the cabin. And then when they start to count down, I have to take this vent out, hold the door closed because it wouldn't close with my foot. So I'm literally surfing on this thing, waiting to hear my cue to go into the cabin. Well, I hear my cue. I open the thing. The gimbal bucks. I shoot into the room, and I give my line. Boom. All right. Cut. The director comes in. Oh, that was great. That was great. Did you guys feel it? It was wonderful. It was good. It was great, right? So this one actor, major, iconic, legendary actor, looks at the director, and he says, no, I didn't like it. I thought that the co-pilot, my character, looked scared. And the director didn't see it at all. He looks up at me and says, hey, man, whatever's scaring you, don't be. I'm like, I'm not. Okay, let's do it again. Okay, so we do this thing again, right? And I just keep getting the stink eye from these 2 actors that are like legendary actors. The only reason I took it was for them.
Jeez.
And they couldn't have been worse to me. And then that's not even the worst. The worst part was I was up for a pilot directed by my friend Brian Levant, who I worked with in that movie, and it's between me and another guy for this pilot. And I have to go that night to read off against this guy. But I'm stuck on this movie set with these 2. And so I lose it. I lose the pilot. And I spent 3 days on a movie that they cut me out of.
Oh.
And I have these horrible stories of these actors that I can't even use their names because they're such big actors that I don't want people to think, if they may have a different experience with them, and that might have just been my experience and whatever. But, I couldn't have been treated worse. I felt like they were number 1 and 2 on the call sheet, and everybody else was beneath them. It was just left a bad taste in my mouth.
So, Phil, you're a guy who's been in, as we mentioned throughout this show, just about 200 shows and films. It's an impressive resume, just so many great things you've been in. What is the key to your success and longevity in this business?
I think play. Keep playing. Keep playing. It's called a play. It's called a teleplay. It's called a screenplay. And we take it so seriously sometimes. We want to make the money. We want to get that profile. We want to be a star. I don't even know what that means. We forget that it's about enjoying ourselves. I think you've seen and heard in me in this interview. I mean, I've laughed. I've almost cried, literally. And I keep myself alive. I keep myself open to all experiences, to the journey. I live my life as full as I can, and I take that to my work. I don't live my life as an actor. I don't live in Hollywood. I didn't raise my kids in Hollywood. I have very few friends who are actors, quite frankly. I have a lot of friends who are just regular people. Not to say that actors aren't regular people, but you know what I'm saying. So I think that I've kept myself as honest and authentic as I can be and not succumb to the trappings of this industry. And I think that that's given me a great longevity. I've also learned diversity. I've diversified myself from in front of the camera to in front of the mic to many different things. I've gone from a teenager. I started at 17. I'm 61 years old. I've understood my transitions. I didn't stand on ceremony. I didn't say, no, I have to be this, I have to be that. I've accepted the characters and the roles as they've come, as long as it wasn't going to kill my soul and I was going to work with good people, maybe make a buck. I'm your guy. And that's made for a very long and fruitful career.
So, Phil, what is the best thing about being a part of the Star Trek universe?
Interviews like this.
Oh, you.
You're remembered. You're remembered. You're taken into a fold that is deep and abiding. I mean, these fans, they love them Star Trek, man. They love their Star Trek, and they love the people that have been a part of that love affair with them. And it's very unique, and it's very special. And again, I honor it. I mean, it's a part of the. I got a badge of honor that I wear as a result of being in so many of these amazing shows. And I'm very respectful. Very respectful.
Well, Phil, thank you so much for chatting with us today, dropping so much knowledge and so many great stories about your entire career and, of course, your time in Star Trek. And, again, folks, I recommend that you guys watch these episodes again if you don't. I say it every week, but these in particular are very, very much worth watching. So, Phil, thank you so much today for everything. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
It was my honor, truly. Thank you so much.
That was our discussion with Phil Morris, who I'm so happy to say he's one of us. He's such a down-to-earth guy. I can't say thank you enough for chatting with us today. And one of these days, I really got to see that comic book collection in person because, wow, that just sounds tremendous. And it's also got me speculating what character he could be doing next if he's going to be rummaging through his comic collection to get some inspiration. So, Phil, when that appearance happens, I hope you'll let us all know. The episode, Looking for Parmak in All the Wrong Places, is basically a Star Trek version of the story of Cyrano de Bergerac, with Worf being Cyrano and Quark being Christian, and Grilka as Roxanne. The concept for the episode was thought up by Michael Dorn, but that very long title certainly wasn't his idea. Even Terry Farrell has balked at the name of this episode, which was in fact a reference to that famous country song, Lookin' for Love by Johnny Lee, back in 1980. This episode has the distinction of also having the third longest name in Star Trek history, with second place going to Star Trek Discovery's The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry, and the original series taking the first place honors with For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. Whew, that was a mouthful of words to say. And if you'd like to follow Phil Morris on social media, go ahead and check out the show notes for this week's episode. We've got all those links right there for you. Thank you again for listening to this week's episode of Trek Untold. Please make sure you follow us on social media to see all of our memes and daily guest updates. And who knows what else, because you never know what pops up on our pages. All you have to do is look for Trek Untold on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you and hear what you think about this week's episode. If you'd like to support this podcast, check out patreon.com/trekuntold to learn how you can keep our ship operating at full power. You can also check out some of our merchandise at teespring.com/stores/trekuntold. That's TEE spring.com. That includes shirts, stickers, mugs, phone cases, and a whole lot more. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this show and give us a review and rating on iTunes or wherever you listen to it. If you enjoy what we do here every week on this show, please give us a 5-star rating and review. It's the best way to make new listeners discover this podcast and help us grow. Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Triple Fiction Productions. And shout out to Scott Ray for setting up this interview. If you'd like to book this week's guest for a convention appearance or an autograph signing event, email Scott at scottray67@aol.com. If you'd like to send us some feedback, suggest a guest, would like to be booked on the show, or are interested in sponsoring us, email me at trekuntold@gmail.com. Once again, this has been Trek Untold. I'm Matthew Kaplowitz, and until next time, fortune favors the bold.